Hi, so we're involved in making an electrostatic generator, actually a Wimshurst machine. Now it's pretty standard with these machines to have a couple of high voltage capacitors. The sort of normal way is to take a bit of pipe, some plastic pipe, stick some aluminium on the inside and outside, and hey presto, you've got a high voltage capacitor. Now I've got this thing, as you know, about steampunk and Victoriana, and these things were traditionally made from glass. Now you can do exactly the same thing. You can take a bit of glass and stick some aluminium to it. But of course I want to make ours from our conductive ink, and so I wanted to test it really to see if it would work as a capacitor. So what I did was take a sheet of glass and paint both sides with our ink and put a copper tape underneath the ink to create a plate supercapacitor painted on glass. Now I didn't do anything to the glass, I just painted it straight on. What I'm getting from this is 2.7 nanofarads. That's actually really encouraging. This is 43 centimetres by 28 centimetres on a bit of 4mm glass, which has a dielectric constant of somewhere between 5 and 10. So it's pretty much bang on what it should be. So, of course, I'm encouraged now to actually build capacitors out of glass and our ink for the Wimshurst machine. So let me show you what I've built. Okay, this is it. This is my Wimshurst capacitor, high voltage capacitor, and we need to build two of these, so we're going to go through how to build this in a second. Now this is meant for the Wimshurst machine, but to be honest I think it is really quite a beautiful thing in its own right, and if you're looking for high voltage capacitors or high voltage equipment that you can get a sense of pride at owning and having made, I think this is the way to go. Anyway, what's it made from? Well, actually it's stunningly easy. Mostly it's just trash. The first thing is a large straight glass. Actually this is a small vase, but I just went down the local store and bought myself this vase, and I noticed that some of the glasses were a little bit smaller, but essentially the same thing. They're called highball glasses, I think. So you need a large straight glass, and then I've got a table leg from my mahogany table that's still left over, so I chopped up some of that, and of course some cutting board. And the first thing you need to do is cut yourself 3 discs. These 3 discs actually are 100 millimeters and just a little bit larger than the glass that I'm going to put them on. So we cut 3 discs. On the 3rd disc you cut out the centre smaller, and the centre will drop into the top of the glass, leaving you this ring piece, and this will go here like that. So those two get glued together, polished up. Those get glued together and polished up. So let's do that. Okay, so when you've done that, your vase goes in the bottom bit by the hollow, and this bit goes in the top bit rather nicely. There we go. And that's beginning to already to look like a capacitor. Now what we need to do is make this gubbins for the top, so let's have a close-up of that. So to make the attachment for the top, what you need is some brass bar. And this says 10 centimetres of 6mm brass bar, and one of these is a terminal block. If you take the terminal block and slice down through the plastic, you can remove that brass insert, take out the screws, and the brass bar will fit nicely in there, and then we can solder that brass bar on, and that's it there soldered on. Now that's ready to accept its connection point. At the other end we want something that we can attach the long arm to, and what I'm using is a lug. So this is a 11mm lug with a 6mm hole, and that just fits on there like that, and then that gets soldered on. Obviously you can't do that like that. You have to put it through there first, because you'll never get it through afterward. So put it through there, glue it on, and then we'll solder that on. And that's it soldered on and that bit finished. Now the next bit needs a few bits and pieces, and the first thing is an ordinary M10 bolt, and what I did was flatten off that and then drill through with a 6mm hole to give me that. So that's the first bit. The next bit is a drawer handle. These are cheap resin drawer handles I got from the local DIY store, and I sanded that piece off where there's a bit of a lump to give me this nice shape here, so we need that bit. And the next bit we need is a piece of brass bar, and this is 40 centimeters long, 6mm brass bar. Then I took my coffee table leg, sawed a section off the tapered end and sawed a section off this other end, and here's the section off the tapered end that I've sanded down. Now to assemble this, it really is just glue and stick it together. So you stick that in there, put your bolt in, and then put that bit on there. And that's that section finished. So to attach these two bits together so they can move, that obviously goes in there, and we do that with a couple of washers. So washer there, bolt there, washer there. Now if we put a nut on that, it will tighten against that and stop it moving. If we loosen that nut, then this can slide in and out, and it can also swivel up and down. Now if I just put a nut on there, obviously it'll be a little bit ugly. So what I did was I put the nut onto an existing bolt, and I took the other section of the chair leg that we did, drilled down 10mm, carved out a rough hex, and what I'm going to do is force that bolt into there by sticking it in the vise. Having done that, when I unscrew that nut, what I get is a nice nut with a little handle that'll let me adjust. There we go. Let me adjust this rather nicely. So that screws on there, and that gives me an adjustment handle. Okay, last bit on this is we actually need to make a connection from here to the capacitor, and we do that with just a dangling bit of chain. This is a bit of bath plug chain. It's done in brass because it looks pretty, and you cut up a length so that when the thing is actually inserted, that bit will just rest on the bottom of the actual capacitor internals, and of course you attach it by dropping it in that thing that we made and screwing it up. So I brought it to this stage because here's where we might differ. You can just coat this in aluminium. Like I say, you get some aluminium strip, something like the aluminium tape they sell for ventilation, and just coat the inside and outside of this with aluminium and find some way of coating that. We're obviously wanting an ink-based capacitor, so what we're going to do is paint it. Now, you paint this bit really easily actually just by dipping it in your ink and remembering to go a section up the brass so that you get a conductive coating. 3 dips and that's what you'll end up with. That is now ready to go. That's actually finished. So this bit here is the other bit that we still need to coat. Now in order to coat that, what we have is something that comes down about there. It wants to be about here. It can be anywhere actually. Here is just because I want to be able to see it, because I like seeing the inside of stuff. So you want some kind of marker tape on it to tell you where it's going to be. So I put a bit of electrician's tape around just so that I know where the level is. Because the next bit, you take your ink and just pour the ink into the glass. And swill it round, making sure you coat it. And the marker tape will give you an idea of where you need to be in order to get a coating on the entirety of the inside of that glass. Here we go, and when you've done, just pour the remainder out. Now, interestingly enough, and it's kind of cool actually, it is a pain to get off when it dries. That's good. So what you need to do now is, while it's still wet, just clean up that inside a little bit so it's nice and neat. Then we leave that to dry. When you left it to dry, you end up with one like that. Okay, so after coating the inside and painting the wall, the last thing to do is to coat the outside. Now we could use a contact. That is, just put something here that it would rest on and make a contact with. But it's a great opportunity to actually put an electrode on. Now this is a bit of copper tape. It's sold as slug tape. You can get it just about everywhere. And if we bother to unpeel a little bit of that and put a strip of copper tape at the bottom, that will actually form our contact that we can connect to. And it makes a nice convenient connection. So all you do is peel back your tape, attach it to the glass, and run it round. So having done that, left a little tag, and I did just by folding the tape back over on itself. You need to paint the outside, and you just paint it on. Let it dry, give it 3 coats, we're done. Go, finished. Now, To me, these are just objects of great beauty in their own right. I'd rather have something like this on my mantle than a cast dog. I just think they're beautiful. Now, these are obviously destined for my Wimshurst machine, but they're useful in themselves, I think, as high voltage storage capacitors and Leyden jars, so I did the video separately. Now, a couple of things. I'm not sure what's going to happen to that ink when the arts start flying. I mean, it's possible the ink might burn off. Well, we're going to find out, and if it does, I can always replace them with brass or chrome or something like that. The other thing is that at high voltage, wood is supposed to become conductive. So although I've oiled this wood, then I'm a little circumspect about actually touching it. So what I'm likely to do is put a pad of rubber underneath, so a circle of rubber glued to the bottom there to isolate it, and probably put some strips of rubber around these handles actually, just to make sure that there's sufficient isolation. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you very much for watching.